Hello everyone. Today we are gonna do the ozone hole reading passage. So let's see how many paragraphs are there in this passage. There are up to F paragraph, which means there are 6 paragraphs in this passage, the ozone hole. And now let's see the questions. First 6 questions. The reading passage on the ozone hole has 6 paragraphs. Oh, there it was written. I forgot to see here. From the list of headings below 1 to 9, choose the most suitable headings for paragraphs A to F. There are more headings than paragraphs, so you will not use them all. So first 6 questions are list of headings. For the 6 paragraphs, we have to assign them headings from these options, these 9 options. So let's just look at paragraph A. Ozone is a bluish gas that is harmful to breathe. Nearly 90% of the Earth's ozone is in the stratosphere and is referred to as the ozone layer. Ozone absorbs a band of ultraviolet radiation called UVB that is particularly harmful to living organisms. Stratospheric ozone is constantly being created and destroyed through natural cycles. Various ozone depleting substances, however, accelerate the destruction processes, resulting in lower than normal ozone levels. Reductions in ozone levels will lead to higher levels of UVB reaching the Earth's surface. The sun's output of UVB does not change, rather less ozone means less protection, and hence more UVB reaches the Earth. Studies have shown that in the Antarctic, the amount of UVB measured at the surface can double during the annual ozone hole. Laboratory and epidemiological studies demonstrate that UVB causes non-melanoma skin cancer and plays a major role in malignant melanoma development. In addition, UVB has been linked to cataracts. So now let's see what are the options. First is the destruction process. So here they have written the destruction processes. They were talking that the ozone is constantly being created and destroyed. They were talking about the destruction, but they said that various ozone depleting substances accelerate the destruction processes. They told that what increased the destruction process, or you could say what worsened that process, but they did not specifically talked about the process, that what is in the process. They did not talk about that what's the destruction process. So definitely first option cannot come. Second is, how is ozone formed? Now it's the same case. They talked about the creation of ozone, but they didn't talk how it is created, how it is formed. So this can also not be our answer. How technology can help? They didn't mention any technology in this paragraph as far as I can see. Artificial emissions, no talking about the emissions, artificial that were man-made, no. What is being done, like what are the solutions, that also they have not told in this paragraphs. The function of the ozone layer, this I think they have told, because they said ozone absorbs a band of ultraviolet radiation called UVB that is particularly harmful to living organisms. So the thing that is harmful to living organism, ozone absorbs that band of ultraviolet radiation, which means it protects. Here also they have written less ozone means less protection, which means the function of the ozone layer is protection. So less the ozone will be, less will be the protection. So definitely we can consider this heading for now. Sixth, the function of the ozone layer. Next is empirical analysis. Empirical, it simply means that something is based on observation rather than theory. So no any experiment they had done here, and no analysis has been done. Initial identification, no, they have not talked when was the uh, ozone or the depletion in the ozone layer was first identified. No, they have not talked about that. And no mention of hospitalization too. So with this, the answer of the first paragraph is sixth, and that is the function of the ozone layer. Now let's move towards second paragraph. This technique I wanted to tell you, that is why I am reading uh, the whole paragraphs, because for each and every paragraph you should see that you should see all the options, that if you think that one option can be the answer, you should also make sure that the other options are not the answer. Okay, so that is why I am doing this with you. Now let's, without wasting any time, read paragraph B. Dramatic loss of ozone in the lower stratosphere over Antarctica was first noticed. These two words, from these two words, I am, uh, I remember that I have read an option that was in the list, and with that was initial identification. Eighth option, because first means initial and to notice means to identify. So they are talking that the dramatic loss of ozone, that the ozone is depleting, it was first noticed in the 1970s. So definitely, I think it would be our answer. um, if you want to read further, then I can with you read it. By a research group from the British Antarctic Survey, who were monitoring the atmosphere over Antarctica from a research station. Folklore has it that when the first measurements, so now also again they are talking about the first measurements, which means they are talking about initial identification, and then they did the measurements were taken in 1975. The drop in ozone levels in the stratosphere was so dramatic that at first the scientists thought their instruments were faulty. Okay, replacement instruments were built and flown out, and it wasn't until they confirmed the earlier measurements several months later that the ozone depletion observed was accepted as genuine. Another story goes on that the BAF satellite data didn't show the dramatic loss of ozone because the software processing the raw ozone data from the satellite was programmed to treat very low values of ozone as bad readings. Later analysis of the raw data, when the results from the British Antarctic Survey team were published, confirmed their results and showed that the loss was rapid and large scale over most of the Antarctica continent. So, no mention of the destruction process. They are talking that when it was first identified, but how it is depleted, they are not talking about that. So this can be our answer. How is ozone formed? They are not talking about how is ozone formed. They are talking about when the depletion of the ozone layer was first identified. How technology can help? They have surely written here that replacement instruments were built and flown out, and it wasn't until they confirmed the earlier measurements. So they thought that their instruments were faulty, so they built replacement instruments, and they checked the experiment with those instruments, and then they confirmed it. So they are talking about, yeah, instruments, technology, but they are not specifically talking about, how technology can help in determining or experimenting. So that can be our answer. Artificial emissions, no talking about the emissions, what is being done, no solutions. They are talking about the function of the ozone layer. This also, although we know that we have assigned this heading, sixth number, the function of the ozone layer, still you should consider it, that whether it can be the answer of paragraph B or not. This I am telling you because you don't know whether the answer of paragraph A that you have written is correct or incorrect. So, why, making a prediction that it will be correct and then not considering it for paragraph B? So, by chance, if it is the answer of the paragraph B, you will never consider it. So, don't do this. Think about all the possibilities. For each and every paragraph, you should consider all the headings. You should see whether the appropriate heading that you are thinking about can be the answer, is the answer, by confirming that the other options are not the answer. So you should see all the headings. So definitely they are not talking about the function of the ozone layer in paragraph B. So this can be our answer, not any empirical analysis. They were talking about experiment and they were also talking about measurements. So many of you might take this heading, empirical analysis. But assigning a heading to a paragraph is not about, if anything is written in that paragraph, then that can be the heading. No, it is about the overall, what is written in the overall paragraph. Because as you can see, they are talking about the first measurements, when the first they identified, they noticed, and then they did an experiment, and then they confirmed it, several months later with some other instruments, so that they uh, just do not think that it was correct. So definitely they are talking about the first, identification, initial identification. Okay, and no talking about the hospitalization. So yeah, the answer is 8, initial identification. So I hope that you would have come to know how to, assign the headings to the paragraphs. I'm not gonna waste your time by reading all the paragraphs. The next paragraphs will just do the answers, how they came. So okay, now let's move towards paragraph C. Here's paragraph C. So the heading is second, and that is, how is ozone formed? So in the very first line, they have talked that ozone occurs naturally in the atmosphere. So how ozone occurs naturally? So this simply answers the question that how is ozone formed naturally? So definitely this is the answer. Okay, now let's move towards paragraph D. The answer of paragraph D is fourth, artificial emissions. In this paragraph, they talked about artificial emissions. Here it was. This is mainly due to the release of man-made chemicals. So they are talking about man-made, that is artificial, and chemicals. Those are types of emissions like containing chlorine, such as CFCs. So it is a type of emission, chlorofluorocarbons, but also compounds containing bromine, other related halogen compounds, and also nitrogen oxide. So these are our uh, the artificial emissions, man-made emissions. So the answer is fourth, artificial emissions. Paragraph E, the answer is first, that is the destruction process. So now let's see how they have talked about the process of depletion or the process of destruction of the ozone layer. The ozone depletion process begins when, so from where the very first line only we can come to know that they are talking about how the depletion process begins and how it, continues, and how it, you know destroys the ozone layer. Begins when CFCs and other ozone depleting substances are emitted into the atmosphere, where winds efficiently mix and evenly distribute the gases. CFCs are extremely stable and they do not dissolve in rain after a period of several years. So after several years, natural gases in the stratosphere combine with the CFCs, and this release chlorine atoms, halogens, and methyl bromide. These in turn all release bromine atoms, and it is these atoms that actually destroy ozone. So now we also come to know that what is the actual thing that destroys ozone. It is estimated that one chlorine atom can destroy over 100,000 ozone molecules before it is removed from the stratosphere. So in this whole paragraph, they are simply talking about the depletion process, and so the answer of the paragraph A is first, that is the destruction process. The answer of paragraph F is fifth, and that is what is being done. So that means they are talking about what are the solutions, they are what are the solutions for uh, lessening the depletion of the ozone layer. So let's see, the first global agreement to restrict CFCs. So now they're talking about restricting CFCs. In the E paragraph, uh, we read that CFCs, contribute to the depletion of the ozone layer. So now they are, what is the way, you know, to stop or reduce the ozone depletion? the way the solution is to restrict CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, came with the signing of the Montreal Protocol. So this is a protocol in 1987, ultimately aiming to reduce them. So the CFCs, it will be reduced by half by the year 2000. So this, they are talking about the previous. Okay, two revisions of this agreement have been made in the light of advances in scientific understanding, the latest being in 1992. Agreement has been reached on the control of industrial production of many halocarbons until the year 2030. So from this we come to know what is being done, which means the process is continuing. So they like started in 1987, and then they are saying that there would be control of the industrial production of many halocarbons until the year 2030. So it means the process is continuing, because the present year it is, before 2030. So the answer would be fifth. What is being done? What are the solutions to reduce the ozone depletion? So if you have any doubt, I know I didn't read paragraphs from C to F in full with you, but still, if you have any doubt or you think that any other option might come as the answers, so you can just ask me in the comment section. Now let's move towards 7 to 12 questions, and these are complete the following statements. So we have 7 to 12 questions here, and we have some options A to H. So for these questions we have to select the answers from these options. That means we have to write alphabets from A to H as answers for the questions 7 to 12. So let's just read what is the seventh question. International agreements will eventually lead to. So from reading up to this, I can guess that it is an F paragraph, because in F paragraph, last paragraph, they were talking about, solutions. So there it was, they wrote about the agreements, protocols. So now let's see. The answer is H, and that option is the cessation of the release of most CFC gases into the atmosphere. The meaning of the word cessation means to stop. So the release of most CFC gases into the atmosphere will be stopped. So why it would be stopped? Due to the international agreements. Now let's see. Yes, they were talking about the first global agreement. So global agreement, it is a synonym of international agreement. So the agreement was to restrict the CFCs, to reduce the amount of CFCs that was to be emitted into the atmosphere. Okay, we can see that, but they didn't talk here about the cessation. Cessation means to stop, there would be no emission. So let's see. Two revisions of this agreement have been made in the light of advances in scientific understanding, the latest being in 1992. Agreement has been reached on the control of industrial production of many halocarbons until the year 2030. The main CFCs, so they were talking about most CFC gases, now they are talking about main CFCs, so it is like similar, will not be produced. So here comes the cessation, because they simply would not be produced, and thus they would not be emitted into the atmosphere. Main CFCs, most of the CFC gases would not be produced, so their release would eventually stop. So that's how the answer of seventh came H option. Now the next eighth question, an apocryphal. Apocryphal means doubtful. Okay, so apocryphal BAS story cites that equipment was changed to measure. So if you remember, I think the location ends in paragraph B, because in paragraph B they talked about, replacement instruments, when they replaced the instruments and then they did the same experiment again. So now they are talking in the question that the equipment was changed to measure what? Answer is E, and that is the apparently anomalous readings taken earlier. Anomalous means that something that is not normal, that is deviated from normal. So the readings that were taken earlier, to measure those readings again, the equipment was changed. If you remember, this was the situation. Yes, they thought that the drop in the ozone level in the stratosphere, it was so dramatic, which means that there was so much drop in the level of ozone that they first thought that their instruments were faulty. So they replaced their instruments and confirmed their earlier measurements. So definitely the answer is gonna be E of eighth question. Now the ninth question. It is a common mistake to associate the ozone hole problem with the issue of heating up of the earth's atmosphere. So they are saying that usually the ozone hole problem is linked, associated with the heating up of the earth's atmosphere. Heating up of the earth's atmosphere, it simply, if we have to put it into two words, it would be global warming, because it means that the earth's atmosphere is getting heated up. So let's see where is its location. So here it is in paragraph D. They are talking in the very first line that the ozone hole often gets confused in the popular press and by the general public with the problem of global warming. So usually the public and even the press associates the ozone hole problem with the problem of global warming, and that is the heating up of the earth's atmosphere. The for problem, here it is written issue. Okay, so now moving on to the 10th question. The thickness of the ozone layer varies with the location of the layer relative to the earth. So whether the ozone layer would be thick or thin, it matters on the location of the layer relative to the earth. Okay, let's see where it is. The answer, it is in here. Yup. Which paragraph it is? Paragraph C. Ozone forms a layer in the stratosphere, thinnest in the tropics. Tropics, like Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, and denser towards the poles. So, thinnest in the tropics. So, the ozone which would be formed, in the tropics, it would be the thinnest. It would be thin, and it would be denser towards the poles. So, it would be thicker or denser towards the poles, which means when from tropics we would move towards the poles, the layer, it would it would be becoming thick. Okay, so on what the thickness of the ozone layer depends, it depends on the location of the layer, that whether it is in the tropics or in the poles relative to the earth. So that's how the A answer came of the 10th question. Now let's see what is the 11th question. The ozone layer is destroyed by a byproduct of CFCs reacting with. So ozone layer is destroyed. So if you remember, it must be in the I think so E paragraph, where they were talking about the destruction process, because they're talking about destruction. So definitely it would be in E paragraph, because its heading was the destruction process. So it is destroyed by a byproduct of CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, reacting with what? Now CFCs react, which leads to the destruction of ozone layer. Answer is D, the normal components of the earth's atmosphere. CFCs react with the normal components of the earth's atmosphere, and that is how it leads to the destruction of the ozone layer. Yup, here it is written. After a period of several years, natural gases in the stratosphere. So what's it? Natural, it's here written normal. And gases, these are the components. Stratosphere, it is a layer in the Earth's atmosphere. So definitely for this, it has been written the Earth's atmosphere. So this is the synonyms that they have used. It what it does, it combines with CFCs, and this releases, chlorine atoms, bromine atoms, and which actually destroy the ozone. So that is how ozone layer gets destroyed due to the combination of CFCs with the natural gases that are present in the Earth's atmosphere, or specifically you could say stratosphere. Okay, now let's see what's 12th question. Common household appliances contribute to the discharge of synthetic chemicals into the atmosphere. Synthetic, from this word, you would have come to know that where the location would be, because synthetic means man-made, or you could say artificial. So definitely the heading of the paragraph D was artificial emissions. So the answer of 12th question will also be in the D paragraph. So common household appliances. What common household appliances they are talking about? They are talking about refrigeration systems, which means refrigerators, air conditioners, aerosols, solvents. So these all are common household appliances. And what do? They were talking about CFCs are a common industrial product. So CFCs are basically used in refrigerators, air conditioners, which are common household appliances. And earlier they were talking about that um, this is mainly due to the release of man-made chemicals containing chlorine, such as CFCs. So release, for the release word, it is written discharge. That man-made chemicals, synthetic chemicals, they are released, they are discharged into the atmosphere, which contains CFCs. And what contains the CFCs? Common household appliances such as refrigeration systems, air conditioners. So that is how the answer of the 12th question came B, the discharge of synthetic chemicals into the atmosphere. So now let's move on toward the last two questions, 13 and 14. Answer questions 13 and 14 below with reference to the diagram of the earth. So a diagram of the earth is given and its layers at the bottom of the page. Write the appropriate letter A to E. So these are the two questions, and they have given the layers A, B, C, D, E, and in the answers of 13th and 14th question we have to write these alphabets only, like which layer. So actually they were talking about in which layer, whatever the question would be. So let's see. In which atmosphere layer would you find the ozone layer and hole? So they are talking that in which layer, atmospheric layer, we will find the ozone layer and the ozone hole. So let's see where it is written. Uh, they were talking about the layers somewhere here in the paragraph C. Here they have written that ozone occurs naturally in the atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere is composed of several layers. We live in the troposphere, ground level up to 10 kilometer high. So I think so the layer E, it is called troposphere, where we live. Okay, but they are asking in which layer of the atmosphere is the ozone layer and the ozone hole present, where most of the weather occurs, such as rain, snow, and clouds. Above that, so above troposphere, above layer E is the stratosphere. So above layer E, there is the layer D. So definitely the layer D is called the stratosphere, an important region in which effects such as the ozone hole and global warming originate. So, okay. So they are saying that the ozone hole, it is present in the stratosphere, layer of the atmosphere, and it is the layer D. So definitely our answer would come D. But this, they were talking about the ozone hole and not the layer. So let's see where something is written about the ozone layer. It is in paragraph C only. Ozone forms a layer in the stratosphere. So now the ozone layer is also present in the stratosphere, that is the layer D, and the ozone hole is also present in the stratosphere, that is layer D. So our answer would be D. Okay, now the last question. In which atmosphere layer would you find a conventional passenger airliner usually flying? Okay, so in which layer of the atmosphere will a passenger be flying? Let's see in which layer. Here it is. Uh, Supersonic passenger jets. So they are talking about the air travel. Supersonic passenger jets fly just above the troposphere, whereas subsonic commercial airliners are usually well in the troposphere. Okay, so the passenger jets that are supersonic, they fly above the troposphere. That means in the stratosphere layer, whereas subsonic commercial airliners are usually well in the troposphere. So in the question they asked, in which atmosphere layer would you find a conventional passenger airliner? So conventional passenger, it means like uh, normal passenger. So a normal passenger airliner would be flying in the troposphere, and supersonic passenger jets, they fly in the layer above the troposphere. So they are talking about the normal conventional passenger airliner. So the answer is troposphere, and layer E is the troposphere layer. So definitely the answer is E. Okay, with this, the today's reading passage is done, and I hope so that you would have known how all these answers came. Still, if you have any doubt, you can just ask me in the comment section. So bye bye everybody.